With a full belly, I began preparations for my next round of night watch. By now my body was used to being up all night. With a few of the remaining smoke grenades I had, I tied them off to tripwires in a small radius around the neighboring houses. I might not see the smoke at night, but I'd damn sure be able to hear them go off. Anything to give me a jump on approaching people would be a huge advantage for me. I'd recovered Jack's 2 handguns, the Maverick 88 I had given Eddie, an AR-15, and a Remington 770 bolt action, both chambered in .223, off the 4 Marauders 12 days ago. I had thousands of rounds for both rifles. Each night I'd sit heavily armed for hours. Gave me a lot of time to think and reminisce about the good times before the shit hit the fan. The hustle and bustle of life, the 9-to-5 grind, paying bills was long gone. Now the biggest worry was protecting against marauders. Being by ourselves worried me. How many more shootouts could I survive? I was damn lucky to escape the 2 I'd been in three weeks into this. I had to find some help. I could hear air traffic approaching. It was loud and it was fast. I saw lights of what looked to be 4 fighter jets. The 2 trailing jets were firing on the 2 leading jets. I assumed it was Russian and Americans. I couldn't tell which was which, though. They were circling immediately above our neighborhood. One fighter jet had just been hit and was heading down. With the backdrop of moonlight, I seen the pilot eject. The jet barreled out of control, slamming into the ground and houses just 1 street away from where I stood. The explosion echoed throughout the neighborhood, shattering windows on neighboring houses. I kept my eye on the pilot as he was parachuting to the ground, 200 yards or so away from me. If I was lucky, he'd be American. Shit, if he was Russian, I was in trouble. I needed to find out, and find out fast. I had no light intimidator flashlight that was 1100 lumens with enough throw to light him up as he fell to the ground. I raced down the street, being careful to avoid my tripwires I'd set up. As I approached, he was still 300 to 400 feet up. Flashlight in the left hand, rifle in the right. I shined the light on him before he could reach the ground. As soon as the 1100 lumens hit him, he immediately drew a sidearm, fired in my direction. Still not knowing if he was enemy or friendly, I had no choice but to engage and return fire. I took cover behind an underground electrical box, 5 houses down from where my wife and children were sleeping. I emptied the first magazine into the parachute, hopefully into him too. Reloaded quickly as he began to fall faster with a compromised chute. The return fire ceased. I heard the sidearm bounce off the road. Had I just done the unthinkable and killed one of our own? 10 seconds later, the lifeless carcass bounced off the roof of a house, sliding to the ground. I carefully approached, rifle drawn, finger on the trigger. I pulled the parachute off the body and discovered a dead Russian soldier. He looked to be no older than his early 20s. I felt a sigh of relief as I exhaled. He had 2 grenades attached to his vest, 1 on each side. Huge score. A game changer, no doubt. I thought about what if he radioed for help before he died. I could be facing a Russian search and rescue mission in the coming days now. I wrapped the body up in the parachute, dragged it out to the middle of the road. Ran back home, grabbed some lighter fluid, and drenched his body in it. I lit a match and watched the fire burn. Looked up into the sky and said to myself, Wolverines! That was for Eddie's family in Washington, D.C. I started walking back home as the sun was beginning to rise to my east. I heard a smoke grenade detonate. Shit, what now? I couldn't catch a break tonight. It had detonated in Danette's front yard, right next to my house. Red smoke was rising up. Who was there? I took cover behind my car in the driveway. I could see a set of eyes shining on me. It was a dog, a Rottweiler to be exact. About 2 years ago, a neighbor down the street had one get loose. I was able to catch him and keep him in my backyard until I found out who he belonged to. Bear was his name. Could it be the same dog? I called out to him, saying, "Hey, Bear, who's a good boy?" Before I finished, he was running my way. Sure as shit, the tag said Bear. He followed me into my backyard and into the garage. All the chaos had woken my wife and kids. They were shocked to see me with a 100-pound Rottweiler standing in the garage. We got Bear some water. I didn't have any dog food. Pancakes would have to suffice. I explained the events of the night to my family. I was going to have to go and investigate the crash site. I'd only seen one pilot eject. I thought there was usually 2 pilots aboard. For the time being, we now had a watchdog. Sure, he'd consume our water and food, but it was a fair trade-off to have his protection. With daylight now rising, you could see the smoke in the sky from the crash. I told my wife I was going to go check it out, and I'd radio her if I ever ran into anything. The Mosin Nagant she used to save my life only had 1 bullet remaining. She was now armed with a spare AR-15 I collected and one of Jack's handguns. Over the past week and a half, I'd trained her on the handling of the AR, but she still had yet to fire it. I had planned to recon the houses in the neighborhood today, but the crash site had taken priority. It was only 1 street over from my house. I reloaded the 2 magazines I had emptied earlier onto the Russian soldier and set back out. I cut through Eddie's backyard and the adjoining yard to his. I could smell the burning jet fuel in the air. I hadn't ventured to this street yet since the EMP detonated. The Russian fighter jet crashed into a front yard, leaving a gaping hole. I was within 50 yards from the scene when I noticed a man investigating the same scene I was. It was a familiar face, one for which I did not care for at all. Here's a backstory. At the end of my street, across the road, there was a scumbag named Gerard that used to live there with his now ex-wife. Gerard and I, we'd had words before. About 3 years ago. You see, he was a grimy individual, a real dirtbag. He'd often run laps around my track, and on more than one occasion, he'd say some disrespectful things to my wife, creeping her out. The kind of things you don't say to another man's wife. He'd also show up at grocery stores when she'd be alone. It got to the point where she feared for her safety. So one day, I'm home by myself, and I see the son of a bitch come running down the road. I immediately cut him off and told him, "My wife had told me everything that you've said to her. You're a creepy piece of shit. She'd never give you the time of day." He replied back to me, "You know you're threatening a cop?" He didn't know, but I'd already researched him at that point. I found out he was an ex-prison guard out of Attica who had been fired for drug charges. I was 34 at the time. He was probably mid-40s. I was ready to throw down that day, but he backed off. Soon after, his wife kicked him out because he'd fathered a child with a girl half his age. I hadn't seen him in years to this point. Today, 3 weeks after the world fell apart, with no rule of law, no repercussions, no worries of incarceration, we'd cross paths. He'd yet to see me at this point. I raised my rifle, fired 3 rounds into him, immediately dropping him to the ground. I couldn't believe the type of person I was turning into. Shoot first, ask questions later. I felt no remorse, though. He definitely would have been a threat to our safety. I no longer took chances. In this world, It was kill or be killed, and I had 3 girls at home to protect. I was the judge, jury, and executioner of this neighborhood now. Gerard suffered the same fate as the Russian soldier did just hours before. I approached his now dead, lifeless body to see firsthand the crash scene. From what I could make out, the few intact pieces of the plane that remained, the pilot never ejected. He was engulfed in the fireball. That was a relief. Before I headed back home, I had one more stop to make. The house that Bear had come from. It was just a few houses away from where I was standing. Maybe his family was still holed up inside. It was a married couple with 3 young children. The house didn't fly an American flag. Instead, it flew a Pittsburgh Steelers flag. The front door was open. Storm door had the glass completely broken out. I wasn't sure to announce my presence or sneak in. I decided to go with the latter. I could smell death as soon as I entered. It was a smell I was getting all too familiar with. I carefully went up the stairs of the raised ranch and seen the bodies of the husband and the wife laying on the kitchen floor, both with gunshot wounds to the head. Blood splattered covering the walls and appliances. There was a handgun still laying on the floor. I thought about the 3 kids I'd see them with when they took walks around the neighborhood. I approached the bedrooms and knew what I was going to encounter. The father had killed his family before turning the gun on himself. Discovering 3 dead children was too much for me to handle. There was no food or water anywhere in the house. They'd been reduced to eating dog food. I retrieved the handgun and 2 bags of dog food to bring home to Bear, who I assumed broke his way out through the storm door to escape the horrors that were left inside.